Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. Is breakfast included? How you guys doing? Great. Today on the show is a really special guest. Her name is Pembe Tokluhan, and I think I pronounced it right. If I didn't, I apologize. Pembe is a backstage specialist. She specializes in tour managing, production managing, stage managing, audio, backline. She does a little bit of all of it. I met her out here on tour. She was working for Nile Rodgers and Chic and really kicking ass on that gig. Anyway, she has a really interesting story. She has an amazing vision, and I think she's going to pull it off. We had a lot of fun, Pembe and I hope you really enjoy this conversation. Let's check it out. Tell everyone who you are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pembe Tokluhan. I am a multidisciplinary backstage creative based in Hackney, London. And that multidisciplinary basically meaning I have a background in audio, tour management, stage management, production management, anything kind of behind the scenes I've been involved with. I run a company called Petok Productions, which is for women, trans and non-binary people that work behind the scenes, screens and lens. And we have an international database of amazing associates on that.
Wow. That's a great intro.
Thank you.
Are you from Hackney originally?
I am born and raised in Hackney. Yeah, I left Hackney for a little bit. Still always been London, but my heart and soul is being a Hackney girl. I'm a North London girl.
I got to ask you this. When I first met you, I met you with our drum tech, Kevin, and your first question was, what postcode are you from?
Yeah, there was too many Londoners. It was like, are you from South of the River? Are you from my side? You know, it's funny because a lot of people from South London don't really come to East and North as much, and it's likewise vice versa. We always make a joke between kind of especially Hackney, Tottenham, which being North London, East London, and South London areas, and it's like, oh no, we don't come to that side. Yeah. It's interesting.
Is this something you've always wanted to do, or did you have something else in mind, or?
To be 100% honest, when you asked that question, I was actually a semi-pro athlete when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. I used to run 100 meters. I played a bit of soccer as well, football. I thought that my career would actually be in being an athlete. But that quickly changed for me when the adversities and the traumas within my area kind of made me a product of my environment to some extent. And it meant that due to certain things, I was unable to actually go and do a course in sports and become a physiotherapist and an athlete. So I, by default, ended up going into the music industry, but I've always been connected to it. So I started playing saxophone when I was about 7, and then picked up the steel pans, steel drums, and played that for many years as well, and read music sheets and made my own music. So I ended up going to college and studying music production and business, and was the only woman out of 59 blokes on that course. And that's kind of my entry into the industry. But no, going back to your kind of initial question, I didn't think that I would necessarily end up doing what I'm doing. I didn't even know that doing what I'm doing was actually a career path. I didn't see people in these kind of career paths in my environment that I was growing up in. So I'm very grateful to kind of fell into this industry. Yeah.
And what you said something earlier, due to circumstances that you weren't able to do. What, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I'm quite an open person. I mean, if you search me up, you'll kind of see how I've, in some sense, fell into what I fell into. So I've grown up in Hackney, London, and Hackney, London, growing up for me was infused with a lot of gangs, violence, criminal activities and trauma. And that is the kind of blatant, most outright way of being able to say it. I didn't really see much people in my area aspire to become much or be much. You know, the person that we looked up to the most probably drove a Mercedes in our area. And it was like, there wasn't really that role model. You know, if I saw people selling paint, I probably would have sold paint. If I saw people selling houses, I would have sold houses. That's not what we grew up in. I grew up in a council estate in Hackney where my parents had to go and work. And that meant that I was brought up in my area. I was brought up on the streets to some extent. And when I say the streets, I don't mean I was homeless, but, you know, I mean in the sense of I used to go to the youth club from the moment I finished school and kind of stayed there till quite late. And I got quite involved in gangs and kind of that lifestyle from a very young age of, I'd say, maybe even 11, 12. And I was quite an angry young person due to a lot of adversities and traumas. And I reckon that because I didn't know how to express myself when I was younger, I was acting out of kind of character and, you know, presenting certain aggressive traits, which is found a lot in young people that experience severe adversities and traumas. And I ended up, you know, being involved quite heavily in whether it was being around people that were involved in certain things, because to me, they were just people that I'd grown up with and known from very young ages, to actually being a person that was incarcerated at quite a young age, you know, and I'm not that I'm proud of it, but I'm very open about it now.
Yeah.
You know, at 14 years old, I was imprisoned in a youth detention centre for just under a year. And you didn't really find a lot of young people at that age kind of getting locked up. Yeah, maybe getting arrested and I'd say going into a cell or going to jail, is what a lot of Americans would say. So it taught me a lot, you know, when I went inside at quite a young, tender age. I kind of thought this is a moment that's going to break me or make me. You know, it was either going in there or potentially losing my life to some extent. A lot of people in my area would be grateful to make it to 16 and then 18 and then 21. So for me, it was about survival. And when I went in there, it really woke me up. You know, it really made me realize that there aren't really friends, real friends, as much as you think there are when you're quite young and the world is a real raw place.
Yeah.
You are quite alone and you've got to fend for yourself and pick yourself up. So when I came out, I had a record, you know, although I'm now 24 years old, which I haven't actually mentioned, but I'm 24 now. And it's a spent sentence. I've got cleared DBS. I can travel around. I have no issues because it was as a juvenile. It was kind of what woke me up to some extent. You know, I came out of there when I was 15 years old, spent my 15th birthday in there and went straight back into the area that I'd grown up in. So I was still involved in doing those things because that's what I knew. And, you know, I was like, I had a bit of a break in some ways and I came back. And then when I was 16 years old, I had to make the decision to move away from my area. So I basically became homeless and I left my area at 16 years old and I had about 50 pence in my pocket and I was living off noodles and I was like, I need to get out of here. So I left and I basically got into events because, and this is in all honesty, because I love community. I love my people. I love giving people opportunity. And I could see that a lot of people that I was growing up with were actually losing their lives to youth violence. Yeah. So I started putting on my own community events and music nights where people would come and perform, whether they were dancers and kind of different disciplines, creatives, coming down and performing. And the money that I'd raised from that, I would use to bury young people who'd lost their life to youth violence.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I basically got into events. So, yeah.
And as you're telling me that, you know, you're, like you said, you're a product of your environment.
Yeah.
That you got into the gangs. We're kind of like a big gang. But, you know, but we're trying to do something that makes people smile, what we do for a living, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You travel around with 8 or 9 people who have that same vision. And that just came to me. It could be a dumb analogy, but...
No, it's not. I agree with that. I think that, you know, the different industries are their own gangs in own ways, you know. A gang, a real definition of a gang is anybody that's in a group of more than 4 people. That is the term for a gang. Yeah. So actually, when you think of it like that, and I believe the police is the biggest gang in the world.
Totally. You know, most definitely.
Exactly. And we could talk about that forever. But, you know,
the biggest untouchable gang.
Exactly that, you know, and loads of other people, politicians and people. And I think that there is a...
Religions.
Yeah, religions and gangs in some ways. I think we're a tribe in some ways, you know. We a tribe takes care of one another.
Yeah.
I think that the term gangsters is not what it used to be. You know, you think that you're in a gang, and when shit gets real, you really see what happens and if people are real. Whereas I think in a tribe, you take care of your tribe.
Yeah. You do.
And we take care of our tribes, and we make sure that if one is struggling, the other one picks them up. And, you know, we know that it's difficult being out on the roads and being out for so long. I mean, this is my first tour, like actual tour out of the UK. I've done a couple of UK bits, but to actually be away from home for so long and kind of learn how different people operate and when they dip and when they're best, and, you know, just respecting that. You know, it's really difficult being away from home and being away from what you know, your comfort zone.
Yeah, you'll get used to it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite grateful because I've been able to go home at certain periods.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm quite used to my own company as well. So I'm doing all right. I think I'm doing all right. Yeah.
Ozzy, who I just spoke with, he was raised in Hackney.
Yes.
And I told him, I said, I'm gonna talk to Pembe, and he said, you know, the way she grew up and me when I was her age around that time, he said if we had a problem, we break danced against each other. Yeah. He said, so that's how far it's come.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wish that it went back to the days where people would just dance it off or, you know,
getting served
or whatever it is, you know. Whereas I think when I was growing up, it was a bit different in Hackney. A lot of people didn't want to be in Hackney. Yeah. Whereas now it's kind of the hippie, yuppie, hipster place.
So it's been gentrified.
And it's really and everybody wants to live in Hackney, Hackney Wick. You know, go to Dalston and Shoreditch. That's not how I remember Hackney.
So you just mentioned you work for Nile Rodgers.
Yes.
You're touring. Yeah. How did you get that gig?
Oh, Joe, I love you. Joanne Croxford.
The great Joanne.
The great Joanne. Oh my God. If you don't know Joe, you need to know Joe. She needs to be in your life. She's amazing. Yeah. I met Joe through the tour production group and the back lounge and a few kind of communities that formed in lockdown about a year ago, maybe just over a year and a half ago. And through the organisation that I run, through the associates that I have, a lot of people get in touch with me and kind of say, oh, I really need someone to fill this role. And Joe and I speak really often, but to receive a phone call from her at such a late hours of the day where it was like 10, 11 o'clock, maybe on a Thursday, and she was like, babes, like this person has pulled out and, you know, they've, you know, for their own personal reasons and they've got another job and whatever it might be. And they had to pull away and this role has become available. And initially, I believe it was meant to be like a production assistant role. Mm-hmm. And when she sent it to me and I saw that it was Nile Rodgers and Chic, I was like, I think that's my gig.
Were you familiar?
Yeah, I know Nile Rodgers and Chic. I mean, I'm a big fan and I grew up to their music. So for me, it was like, I'd been offered quite a lot of tours this year. I'd probably been offered over 20 tours this year and actually said no to a lot of them. And I'll be very honest about the reason why I said no to a lot of them. Some being the money wasn't right and people were asking for really unrealistic things. And that's just me being really honest and valuing myself. Yeah. And I was a bit tired of being the tokenistic woman of colour. I really wanted to feel like I could work with an artist of colour, you know, a global majority artist, somebody that I could relate to. And when I saw somebody like Nile Rodgers come up, I was like, that's actually my gig. Mm-hmm. You know, I love to share opportunities and give things out to people, but I was like, I think that's mine. And, you know, I had to cancel a lot of stuff and say no to different bits and bobs. And I actually took it on the basis that there was this one community festival that I had to facilitate and be a part of because I'm the site assistant and production manager for it. And I was also providing 10 crew for it for my company this year. And it's a local Black organised and Black-led community festival called Radiate Windrush Festival. And I was like, if you let me come back for that, I'll take the gig. Because actually, I need to know that I'm going to come back for that. And I dropped quite a lot of big jobs and was like, they'll always come back round. But this is what I live for. And I'm not going to just leave my community on their face. Mm-hmm. So they gave me the opportunity to actually take the gig on the basis that they'd fly me back, and they'd fly me back to where I needed to go to continue the tour. And I was like, actually, if they can respect that and they know where I come from, this is the right spot for me. So I took it on that basis. And obviously I know a few people through the tour production group and other spaces that knew the production manager and said, you know, put in a bit of a good word. And I think that's it. It's about who you know, not what you know. Your network is your net worth.
Yeah, yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did adapt and adjust some of the kind of role itself. So it's now tour assistant. So I'm the tour assistant for Nile Rodgers and Chic at the moment with the Chic organisation, and that basically means supporting the tour manager as well as supporting the production manager, looking after the band a little bit and looking after the crew. And you know, my long-term goal is to be a production manager and be out there and train other women, trans and non-binary people to go into those roles, because it's very white, male and niche.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot on this, and I actually, there's a Noelle Jordan. She has a podcast called "What's Up, Rhodey?" You know, how you doing? And it was a video podcast, and it focused on equity.
Okay.
And you know, I did one of them, and she asked like, how can we help the industry?
Yeah.
And I'm like, refer your friends. Refer your friends of color. Refer your friends, your women friends, your you know, female friends, because there's a lack of diversity in this industry.
There really is.
I'm usually the only Hispanic on a tour. I don't look at it like, because I've been very fortunate to work with crews that, I mean, there's always one or two on a crew that you know they're the meatheads. Yeah. You know,
yeah, definitely.
as we refer to them, but everyone else is ready for these changes that are happening.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that there are some people now that are the gatekeepers, and to some extent, they are the people that can open those doors for people. You know, it's all about believing in somebody and giving them that chance. And diversity looks different for everybody, but diversity isn't just bringing some women as well as men. Yeah. You know, it's bringing some non-binary people and some trans people and some Muslim people and Hindu people and Jewish people and black people and white people, and just, you know, it's really,
because everyone's just waiting for that opportunity. Yeah. And if you don't get it, you know, it just deflates you.
It does. And it's really difficult to be what you can't see. Yeah. You know, if you can't see it, how can you be it? Yeah. So the more support that's out there to bring people up into the industry. And, you know, I was on a talk with Susie Green in the back lounge just before this, and we referred to the oldies in the industry as dinosaurs and dinosaurettes. And those dinosaurs and dinosaurettes need to, not that they need to, but it would be lovely if they acknowledged the privilege that they had being in the position that they're in, to then allow others to come in and really nurture them, you know, because it is quite a tough industry and you do need to have quite thick skin. And
you do. It's
also about not patronizing people and giving them the chance to ask questions and say, what is this? And how do you do this? And it is very fast paced, but you know, it's about creating the most comfortable environment that you can, that probably you would have appreciated somebody doing that for you, or somebody did do that for you, and that's how people are kind of where they are today. Yeah.
I mean, in this industry, like you said, your network is your net worth.
Yes.
You know, it's who you know. That, You know, I fell into this industry completely by accident. I say it was an accident. I was a runner. And that's how I got my first gig.
Yeah.
The tour manager liked me.
And that's the thing. That's the key thing. You said liked you.
Yeah.
Kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
People will remember that cup of tea that you bought them, and, you know, the fact that you asked them how their day was when you walked past them in the gig.
Exactly.
But people will not necessarily want to be around you when you're not the nicest person. You could have the biggest network and the most money in your pocket, but if you're an arsehole.
You're an asshole.
I say that on here. If you're an arsehole, you're an arsehole.
No, it's true. The guy that got me into this, he told me 90% of the gig is if you can get along with people, if you can live on a bus, if you can live on buses, hotels, airports, and because that 10% of the gig, if you can learn that, you can come in not knowing that, and you will learn that, but you can't learn how to not be an asshole.
Exactly. People skills and etiquette and manners are just an important part of just. And
they're everywhere in this industry, but I think the majority of this industry are ready for the changes.
Yeah, there are a lot of people, and it's refreshing. It's refreshing for people to also be able to question things like why should we do this, or what difference is that going to make, and just being able to not be so angry at people. You can't hate on what you don't know. So be able to create a space where people can ask and talk about things, things that have been coming up quite recently, even around pronouns and how you refer to people, and not gendering people, and just being able to not deny people's lived truths. Just because you've not lived it doesn't mean that somebody else hasn't.
I will be honest, like when I didn't understand transgender. I didn't.
Okay,
and then I felt embarrassed because I didn't. And, I didn't understand pronouns but I admitted it. Like, I'm ignorant to this because I was, I'm 50 years old. I was brought up in a time when, certain words were used, and even though they're bad, like, so I feel like I'm still learning.
But I think we're all always learning,
If I refer to someone as he and they go, can you refer to me as they? I'm like, my apologies.
Exactly. If you're made aware of it and it's not done in a combative manner, you can't be angry at somebody because they don't know something. And it's especially, I grew up in a Muslim, Turkish, Cypriot household, and I don't know anybody who's come out in my family. My pronouns are she, her, and I probably should have said that at the beginning, but my pronouns are she, her, and I am a lesbian woman. I identify as a lesbian. So even just navigating with that and being able to, it's that thing, going back to the allyship, being able to support somebody just because you're not a person of color doesn't mean that you can't support people of color. Just because you're not a transgender person doesn't mean that you can't support or stand up for the trans community when certain things are being said or done.
But those are the two words, support and stand up. Don't speak for them like you are them, but support them.
Yeah, you can't, it's really difficult when someone says, so can you tell me what it's like to, why trans people refer to themselves, or why non-binary people prefer they, I'm not non-binary.
Or the even more popular, this is what you should do.
Yes.
Like, no, I don't need you to tell me what I should do. Just support me.
Exactly.
Stand up for me.
It's that. It's just that support and just kind of that allyship. It's not about saying, we have our own ideologies. That's the reality. We've grown up in different environments. Most of my family are homophobic. And that doesn't mean that don't make that excuse. Don't be ignorant. Just because you've grown up in a certain way and you think that there's no harm in your behavior. If you're made aware that you're being offensive or you're upsetting somebody, then just try and work on it.
Because that excuse of that's the way I was brought up, it's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse, especially when you're in the big wide world out there. And like I've just said, grown up Muslim, Turkish Cypriot, it's not a out there thing in my community. So it does. I mean, I'm Buddhist now, and I don't really necessarily practice Islam anymore. But it goes back to that thing of you need to be able to, not that you need to be able to, you have a power in supporting people and giving them a voice when they don't have a voice in the space.
Exactly.
And if you can do that, then props to you, and that's how the world becomes a better place. Just because, I don't know, we go to gigs. Just because you're not in a wheelchair doesn't mean we shouldn't think about the route for the person that might be a wheelchair user. It can be anything.
Yeah. When we met you in Helsinki, you were on stage. We saw you in the way you carried yourself. And then we didn't know you were with Nile. We thought you were with the local production. And then we found out you were with Nile. And both Kev and I were like, I bet she could kick both of our asses. because the way you carried yourself. And then we met you and you were so like, you talked to us like you'd known us forever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from London.
You told me you were 24, but you carry yourself like someone who's been around the block, which you have.
Yeah.
And that's why I think. Yeah.
I think growing up from a young age, being forced almost to grow up, you do develop a different demeanor about yourself. And I'm also a youth worker, so I've got two hats. I work in the production industry, but I'm also a youth worker, and I train the Metropolitan Police and Thames Valley Police. So I'm around different types of people, and I'm always interested in the way people kind of behave and do certain things, and I'm a very good adapter.
Yeah. So
if I have to code switch, or if I have to I don't know, acknowledge certain behavioral patterns in people with the way that they express themselves, I try to create a safer, nicer space for people. Yeah. I always think it's a bit awkward when people are standing around and they don't introduce themselves. So I don't need that prompt. I've got to where I am today because of the networking that I've done and going out there and being like, hello, I am this person. I do, like I said, I'm from Hackney, I'm from London. I've had to have quite thick skin and operate in a certain way, but I am a very lovely person. I'd like to think, you are. So for people to approach me and then kind of see that, it feels like we've known each other for a long time. That's great. I feel like I've known you for so long, and I'm sitting here in the hotel room, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing this podcast.
When I saw you on stage at Hyde Park, and I walked up and you gave me a hug, and I thought, wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's just nice. It's not. Do you know what? It's nice to be nice.
Yeah.
And I was saying this when we was getting off the plane the other day, and I was like, it's actually quite nice to just be kind. Someone was like, oh, you're helping everyone. I said, well,
it's easy to be an asshole.
It's easy to be an asshole. It's harder to be constantly nice. And, we all have ups and downs, but kill them with your kindness.
Yeah.
People don't know how to react when you're not breaking.
Yeah.
And when you come from a certain walk of a life, I think that I do need to work 10 times harder, and I do need to prove a point more so maybe than others do, and kind of work 10 times harder to be where I am, because I might not have had certain privileges that others have.
Yeah.
But it's also about showing people that no matter where you come from, that you can make it. The world, you always hear when you're young, the world is your oyster. And I never really got that until I grew up a bit more, and I was like, actually, the world really is your oyster. And you can either sit around and not feel sorry for yourself, because mental health is a real thing, but sit around and dwell on things you can't change.
Yeah.
Or you can get up and try and make something better of this. And for those kind of listeners out there, the one piece of advice I'd give is write down everything that's stressing you out and cross off everything that's out of your power that you can't change. And actually look at the things that you do have, that you can do something about, and you'll see how small that list becomes. And the reality is that if you can't change it, if it's not meant to be, then it won't be.
Yeah.
And just let it be.
I have a 25-year-old son, and I used to tell him he would stress out about things, and I would say, if you can fix it, don't worry about it. And if you can't fix it, why worry about it?
Yes, exactly. That.
And it's very cliche, one of my cliches. But what you said earlier, like that you have to work 10 times harder. You don't present yourself though. I know how much harder you have to work.
Yeah.
But you don't walk around with that chip on your shoulder. Like,
I'd hope not.
Like I have to do this and I have to do that, but which, like I said, it's so nice being around you, because I'm always trying to smile. I'm always the guy trying to make people laugh.
Yeah.
And to be around somebody that radiates that, like, I'm drawn to that.
Yeah, I think energy is an important thing. It is hard sometimes. We're tired and all of that, but the reality is that, if you're putting out good energy, you will get good energy.
Yeah.
I really believe in that. So you can walk around with your face sulked and looking like you're unapproachable, but people won't remember that. People will remember the person, like I said, that smiled at them, that said, "How are you?"
Yeah.
That gave someone a hug, because there's only so many hugs we get while we're on tour, and and that means something special. So it's nice, I think that it doesn't cost a penny to be kind to people.
Yeah.
No
true.
matter where you're at. And I always used to get told by my mum that you should treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO.
Yeah.
And I live by that.
Yeah. Sometimes the janitors are a lot cooler than the CEO.
Yeah, exactly that.
Man, what are your plans? How do you want to change this industry?
Oh, I have 101 plans, I'm telling you. But I think I'd like to say that maybe I've already started at that. I've got 100 associates on Petok Productions currently, from all around the world, and been fortunate enough to give people work and train people up in certain roles in the kind of backstage industry. My kind of long-term goal is to be able to be the go-to database and network for people to diversify their backstage roles behind the scenes, screens and lens, to come to Petok Productions and know that it's not just about getting somebody in as a token. It's about actually getting people, some that might need some support, and some that might actually be already amazing at what they do. 85% of our associates are people of color. Yeah. There are loads of amazing databases out there and, initiatives out there, but I really believe that Petok's unique. It's very hard to find people that aren't your typical white men in this industry. Yeah. And I'd like to change that bit by bit. I'd like to be able to give more people opportunity. I'd like to be able to show people that no matter where you come from, that this is something you can achieve. The dream would be to have a headquarters in every continent and provide people non-stop in backstage roles. And that's all remits of production, whether that's TV and film, music, radio, just live production festivals, anything that's production. Production is production. And that's that thing. We believe that you can transfer, you hear the term transferable skills a lot, but a lot of people don't really talk into it much, and like the TV and film industry was still booming more than ever when lockdown happened. And so many people in the music industry thought, oh my God, I've got nothing to do. But actually you have something in you that industry, which is very similar, can also utilize. So that's what I want to do. I have that dream with Petok Productions to have headquarters everywhere, to have training facilities. So within Petok Productions, we've got Petok Academy, which is training, shadowing and mentoring opportunities, predominantly for young people, but people that just want to get into the sector. Yeah. So giving them the chance to come and see what it's like to be in different backstage roles. Link them up with venues and other amazing people in the industry, kind of like life coaches and mentors. So that would be the dream. I mean, not that my individual dream, but my dream is to open up an amazing arena in Northern Cyprus, which hasn't been achieved yet, that has facilities to train young people up in backstage roles. So they put on the shows that are there. They learn about backstage roles. People can fly in from around the world and study there as well and go off around the world and do what we do.
Right on. Yeah. Well, the story you told me.
Yes.
From your surroundings, being in a gang, going to, let's say prison. Yeah. Coming out to see, I saw a picture of your crew on a private jet.
Oh, yes.
Coming from that, you're 24. You have your whole life ahead of you. Everything you've accomplished is amazing.
Thank you.
Do you sometimes stop and say that, hey, I'm proud of myself?
I think...
You've lived 8 years longer than you thought you were.
Yeah. I think I'll be honest, I think it's difficult to feel a sense of being proud within myself, because that's not something that I heard much of. And it's something that I'm definitely teaching myself. I think the way I operate is great. I've got this trophy. Let's put it in the trophy cupboard. Let's get the next trophy. Yeah. And that's how I always work. And sometimes I do take a moment. I have stood on the side of the stage and just been like really emotional and been like, oh my God, I'm here right now.
Yeah.
You know, my friends always send me messages, and the young people I work with are like, oh my God, this is what you're doing. I recently put up a post and said something along the lines of, I'm not putting up this post to show off in any way, but I'm just putting it up to show you that you can do whatever you want in life and you can achieve that. And it was of me standing next to the jet. And since then, we've been on probably about 4 or 5. But, you know.
Lucky.
But, you know, it's just, it's amazing. I do feel proud.
Good.
You know,
should.
I do. Thank you.
I use the word in my own personal life. I always say, if you want something, you can manifest it.
Yes.
There's nothing unachievable. Now, I lived a long time in my life when I thought I was going to live and die in the same shit town I grew up in.
Yeah.
I thought it was worthless. I was, and it took me a long time to realize if I want something, like I said, I'm 50 and if I want something, I'm going to make it happen. Exactly. No one's going to make it. No one got me into this industry, but
and no
someone
one's going to do it for you.
Yeah. And no one's going to get me that gig. I'm in my, what I didn't know at the time when I got this gig 12 years ago, it was going to be my lifer gig.
Yes.
But I'm here and I love it. But I do other things, and I think to myself all the time, like I'm around, not in this crew, but around other crews. Like you hear them whinging and moaning. Mm-hmm. Like, what are we complaining about? We get to travel.
We get
everywhere.
to travel. We get
to meet new people. We get paid. I always say I've seen the world on someone else's dime for years.
Yeah.
I've been around the world 3 times.
That's amazing.
What is there to complain?
Do you feel proud? You should feel proud.
I just recently started feeling proud. I bought some sunglasses here. I saw them when I came here, and I bought some sunglasses, and I perseverated on it all through tour. And the last time I was in London, I was like, I deserve those sunglasses.
Do you know
I'm gonna go buy them.
Exactly. Do you know what? It's amazing because I've got this watch on my hand, this electrical watch, and I've been wanting it for a while. And I was like, I deserve that. A bit like the sunglasses. I deserve that. And, you know, sometimes you have to do that for yourself.
Because I'm the biggest, like, with buyer's remorse. I'll buy it and I'm like, oh, you didn't need that.
Yeah.
But I actually wore them today and I was like, oh, I can't take them back now.
Oh, they're yours now. I'm sure they look lovely. No, they're yours and you deserve it. And, yeah, you should be proud.
Well, Pembe, I'm so happy to meet you. I was so happy to spend the little bit of time we spent together. This is an interview I wanted since I was told about you, and when I was introduced to you, and I chased you, and and we made it work. Thank you for giving me this time and to get to know you better. And I'm sure we're gonna cross paths, if not work together at some point.
Definitely. Thank you very much for having me. If anybody's out there that would kind of like to see where I'm at, you can find me on Instagram at Petok, Petok, Pem, and my company is Petok Productions, Petok Productions. So reach out, you know. I know I kind of walk around and I've got this tough shell about me, but I love to connect. I love to connect and I love to be around people, and I'm a lovely person deep down when you get to know me.
You're a very lovely person. Like I said, sometimes you meet people on the road and you're like, they're pretty cool. And then sometimes you meet people and you're like, that's a lifelong friend.
Oh,
right.
Yay.
You know? And so I feel privileged that you took the time to come talk to me today.
Thank you very much.
This podcast is called Is Breakfast Included?
Oh, I like that. I didn't even know that. I'm just talking on this podcast and I'm like, what's it called?
If it was included, what would you have?
Oh, if it was included, I would have a full Turkish breakfast. And that would be like some feta cheese, some cucumbers, some tomatoes, some olives, some honey, some bread, some good bread. And that would do me. And a fried egg, a runny fried egg.
Yeah. That you can dip in.
Exactly. I don't like the ones where they're just hard. You know, you can get a runny fried egg and have the soldiers and dip them in. And yes.
All righty. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Right on. Pembe Tokluhan. You can find her at Petok Productions. You can find her on Instagram. Reach out to her. Pembe loves to talk to people. She loves communicating. She's going to change this whole industry. I know it. Give it a visit. check it out, support it. All right, guys, I am done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.